Coming up, it's a day to get out and vote.
I voted today because it's so important, especially in this time.
It's primary election day for Ohio and 4 other states as we count down to the presidential election in November. And Ohioans say it's important to get their voices heard.
I don't like the situation with our politics today.
I think we just need to voice our opinions and let people know how we feel.
From the race to see which Republican will face off against Democrat Sherrod Brown, to school levies and judicial races, 3 News has you covered as we count down to the polls closing in just about an hour and a half.
Live from WKYC Studios, this is 3 News at 6 with Russ Mitchell and Christy Paul.
And good evening. Thanks for joining us on this busy primary day.
Yeah, as you just heard Russ say, the polls are open for about another hour and a half. And listen, our team is working really hard for you tonight. Isabelle Lawrence has live voter reaction. Danielle Wiggins is in Macedonia breaking down key school levies in Northeast Ohio.
But eyes in Ohio and across the nation are on the big race tonight. Who will voters choose as the next GOP Senate candidate? Mark Namick from Signal Cleveland will join us with analysis. But let's begin with 3 News political reporter Lena Li with coverage on just how contentious this race has become in these final hours. Lena, good evening.
Good evening, Russ. Yeah, the race to take on incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown has been a pretty nasty clash between Donald Trump MAGA Republicans versus Ohio's GOP establishment. And what really happens tonight will show us where the GOP in Ohio is headed and just how strong Trump's grip is in this state. The 2 frontrunners in the polls are State Senator Matt Dolan from Chagrin Falls and Cleveland businessman Bernie Moreno. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Frank LaRose from Akron is lagging behind. Moreno has the endorsement of Trump, who rallied with him in the Dayton area last weekend. And Dolan has the backing of the GOP's old guard, if you will, endorsed by Governor Mike DeWine and former Senator Rob Portman. I spoke to Ohio Wesleyan politics professor Dr. Brianna Mack, who believes Dolan would be the one to give Sherrod Brown the toughest competition.
Worst case scenario for Sherrod Brown is Dolan securing the GOP nomination. He would then have to try and make a decision. Will he lean fully into the Democrat playbook? Will he continue his working Americans playbook that has worked for him, tried and true? He would have to work really hard to not only differentiate himself from Dolan, but differentiate himself without isolating his voting base.
So how impactful is this race? Well, Democrats have been meddling. Democrat groups have spent more than $2 million on anti-Bernie Moreno ads, like this one that I'm sure you've seen on TV. And by the way, I just got new spending data from Ad Tracker Medium Buying. Close to $30 million has been spent so far in this race up to today. That's far more than any other primary in the country. So, Russ, the money after today that will go toward flipping or retaining Sherrod Brown's seat will likely make it the most expensive race in the nation.
Wow. All right, Lena Li, we'll see you at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the polls have been busy today. Isabelle Lawrence is at St. Patrick Church on Rocky River Drive in Cleveland with more on voter turnout in the state. And also, Isabelle, I know that you've been talking to voters. What are they telling you?
Yeah, Christy. Well, a lot of people here are driven to come out by a whole number of races on this ballot. Like you mentioned, we're here at St. Patrick Church in Cleveland. Now, it's been fairly quiet here this afternoon. Things picking up as the afternoon has progressed, as people have gotten off of work and school. As you can see, some people entering here behind me. But the good news is that poll workers tell me things have been fairly smooth today. No issues here, which is always what we want to hear on an election day like this one. Now, earlier today, our team spoke with Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose, and he told us that as of this morning and as of this afternoon at last check, they had already received more than 400,000 ballots cast for both early voting and absentee voting. Now, LaRose, who is also running in the U.S. Senate race, reminding voters it's important to not only vote in presidential elections in November, but of course in these primaries too. And while the federal and state level elections are certainly capturing voters' attention today, those I spoke to were also paying close attention to the ballot issues at the local level.
It's important. It's your home. You care about who's here, what's going on, who's running it, what's happening.
There's some judicial races that are important, and the race for prosecutor in this county is very important.
That's my name. I have a last name.
And voters I spoke to today say if you don't vote, you don't get to complain about what is going on. We heard that message over and over again from voters today. Those were voters I spoke to out in Bay Village. Now, again, about an hour and a half until these polls close. You can come until 7:30. Now, let's go ahead and check in with our education station reporter Danielle Wiggins in Macedonia. Danielle, we understand you've been keeping a close eye on some of those local issues like the levies.
Yes, I am, Isabel. I am here in Macedonia, where the Nordonia Hills School District is anxiously awaiting to see if their levy passes tonight. Now, the district is hoping that voters approve their operating and permanent improvement levy, which is expected to generate more than $7 million annually. Now, according to the Nordonia website, the money will go to renovations, educational programs, and safety and security improvements. If approved, the levy will cost taxpayers about $175 for every $100,000 of the county's appraised value of their property. Now we move to Medina County, where the Medina City School District is also looking to pass a levy tonight. According to school officials, their operating levy would generate approximately $14 million each year, costing taxpayers an extra $263 annually for every $100,000 of their home's value. The superintendent says the district is already making cuts of about $8 to $10 million over the next 5 years due to the failure of a combined bond issue and levy last November. And lastly, we head to Cuyahoga County, where the Brooklyn City School District is looking to generate $20 million through a bond issue they have on today's ballot. The money will be used to renovate buildings in the district. Now, if approved, the bond issue would cost taxpayers an additional $104 annually for every $100,000 of their home's value. Now, we are tracking multiple school levies and bond issues throughout Northeast Ohio. You can see the full list on WKYC.com. Christy, back to you.
Yeah, Danielle, you all are working so hard out there. Thank you so much. Live for us in Macedonia.
Right now, let's bring in our pal Mark Namick, the managing editor of Signal Cleveland, to talk about the Senate race, the big race that the country is watching tonight. Lena pointed this out a few moments ago. This race has become pretty contentious. It was civil for a while, a little jabbing, but pretty civil for the most part. Are you surprised it's become so nasty?
What I think has surprised people is how close it's become, because you had Bernie Moreno coming into this with the endorsement of Donald Trump, which people thought would be enough to seal the deal, and it hasn't been. So when things are close, things always get nasty. Why? Because negative ads work.
Let me ask you about the low voter turnout today. Does that benefit any of these candidates in particular?
So let's look at what primaries are. They motivate the base. So the base are typically the extremes on each side. So you're going to try to pull right-leaning Republicans out. If that base is suppressed, that's going to hurt the more right-leaning candidate, in this case, Bernie Moreno. Again, the evidence is the race is close, so that is definitely playing into this.
And again, statewide, a primary election voter turnout not really high today.
No, because with the presidential candidates already sealing their deal, statistically, no one's motivated to come out for Trump or Biden at the moment.
Lena, you also talked about how expensive this primary race has become, with two of the more, I guess, wealthy candidates would be Bernie Moreno and Matt Dolan, loaning themselves millions of dollars for the campaign. What does that tell you about how expensive the general election is going to be?
Well, let's look at perspective from the J.D. Vance, Tim Ryan race from a couple of years ago. Set a record of all time when you looked at all the outside spending as well as the individual spending, and you had multiple millionaires in that race as well. There were $190 million spent on that race. This could be close to that. Again, we don't have that dynamic going on right now, but Matt Dolan gave himself loaned $10 million for this race. Groups on both sides have already pledged to spend tens of millions in support of their candidate, because this could decide the Senate.
Lena had a political scientist in her piece who said that if you're Sherrod Brown, you want to face Bernie Moreno in the general election. You agree with that assessment?
The evidence is there, because the negative ads on Bernie Moreno run by Democrats was meant to generate his base and support to get out and see him win. They look at Dolan as more of a moderate, where he can play a little more center. Remember, he's not sought the Trump endorsement. Coming into the general election, that would be better for him. So Sherrod is watching now, and he is, and the Democrats are hoping it's Bernie Moreno because they think he could provide a much easier victory.
Yeah.
Of course, he would argue. Bernie would say no.
Right. You talked about how tight the polls were. They have pizza coming in here tonight. Is it going to be an early night or a late night, do you think?
I like to be conservative on this and say around 10 o'clock, 10:15 we should have. You got a close race. Remember, there are 3 candidates. We know he's talking about Frank LaRose. He has dropped in most polls, but that still means the race splitting depending where things are coming in. Rural Ohio, votes might go for one candidate or the other. It's going to be close.
So we have time to eat our pizzas.
We
is
do.
What you're saying. All right, Mark Dolan. We see you at 11. Mark Namick, we'll see you tonight.
Yeah, I'll
at
be
11
back.
o'clock.
Thank you.
3 News, of course, will keep you updated as results come in tonight. NBC Nightly News will have more on today's primaries, and we'll have live results tonight on 3 News at 11. In the meantime, you can head to WKYC.com for real-time updates as the polls close at 7:30.